Scully along with Ron Kramer. This is Pete Van Weeren welcoming you to Ross-Ade Stadium.
Live from Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette, Indiana.
It's a football Saturday in West Lafayette, Indiana, and one of the biggest home games in decades.
Boilermakers rush the field. What a night in West Lafayette.
Your Central Indiana Ford dealers are a proud sponsor of Purdue football and the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. Visit your local Central Indiana Ford dealer today.
Welcome to the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. I'm Corey Palm with Tim Newton as we celebrate the home of the Boilermakers by going through, some of the greatest games in its 100-year history. A few notes before we get started. As always, this is not a comprehensive list. We can't quite get through all the great games in the weeks that we have. We're doing our best. Secondly, these will be presented. They are being presented chronologically, not as any sort of rank order. Although, Tim, I got to say, today's game, if we were ranking, this would be in everybody's top three.
I think that.
Today, plenty to talk about with this game. We're going all the way back to October 20th, 2018, and the Tyler Trent game. Tim, lots to talk about before the game. Before we do, what are some of your memories just overall from that day?
Well, it started out strangely. If you remember, the fans that were there that night, there was a big storm. The kickoff was at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, something in that range. At about 4 o'clock, there was a huge storm that went through, and we used to park at the golf course heading in, and then they would shuttle us over. Right after we got through on the golf course, we heard there was a big tree that fell, and it was just about where we had gone through on the golf course. So you're kind of thinking, this might be our night after. But it was really windy, really blustery, a little bit chilly. But the electricity, once that game kicked off, sometimes you get a night game and there's a big charge at the beginning and then it kind of fades. This one, from opening kickoff to final gun, there was a buzz and an electricity that you've rarely felt in Ross-Ade.
It was palpable, absolutely. And I've heard, the sort of the easy thing to say as well. It was written in the stars. It was everyone, that it was out of everyone's hands that the outcome was determined, and that may be true. But yeah, I agree with you on the energy. The weather is an interesting footnote looking back. My wife, incidentally, that night was at a concert up in South Bend that night, and it was snowing. So it was somewhere between here and South Bend was the front. But before we get to the game itself, the 2018 season did not start like season 2 of the Blough era.
It did not start well. Purdue started the season 0-3. Had that opening game against Northwestern that people were all geared up about, and then an inexplicable loss to Eastern Michigan in the rain.
Yep.
And then a loss the next week, and you're sitting in 0-3 and wondering, after the 2017 season had people so excited, where is this going? And then all of a sudden things turned around, and still though, Ohio State came in a prohibitive favorite in this game, mostly because of their offense. Dwayne Haskins was having a terrific year, and they had as prolific an offense as Ohio State usually does.
Yep.
Talking to Jeff Brown before that game, he felt like Purdue could score. He felt like they could move the ball and score against Ohio State. The big question was, could they stop the Buckeyes?
And we got a little bit of an answer early on in that game. Purdue got on the board first. David Blough, who is going to be our guest later on the show when David joins us for what we hope is going to be we know is going to be a great conversation. He hit Isaac Zico for a touchdown late in the first quarter.
That capped a 98-yard scoring drive.
Right. And the Buckeyes turned around and drove down the field, but got held to a field goal. The defense was in that sort of bend but don't break mode early and was able to make a stop.
Well, that was the case all night long. Ohio State threw the ball 73 times in that game, and they were able to move the ball pretty well inside the 20s, but once they got down close to the goal line, the Purdue defense stiffened, and while the Boilermakers were scoring touchdowns, Ohio State was being held to field goals.
Absolutely. 7-3 is where it was deep into the second quarter. Purdue with the ball and, hoping for some points before the half. They drive down. We are, late in the first half, 4th and 3, and one of the calls of the year from Coach Brom and his staff is they tried out Spencer Evans for what was not going to be a field goal attempt.
No, and if you remember, just before that, if I remember correctly, Rondale had a rare thing for him. He had dropped a pass.
Dropped a pass.
That would have been a touchdown.
Yes, he was going to.
So he came off, was hanging his head, and if you bring the field goal unit on, you're thinking, well, we're going to get some points, but it's really deflating.
Yep.
Joe Shopper, who was a great athlete, he needed 3. He got about 3.1, and he got hammered.
He did.
And the biggest concern we had was, did he hang out of the football? Because he got hit as hard as anybody did that night.
I remember talking to him later that week or the next week. Maybe it might have been after the game. I don't. You lowered your shoulder a little bit there, Joe. You were trying to punish somebody. You forgot that you're a punter here. Like he was trying to lay the lumber, and like you said, everyone fortunate he just hung onto the ball, got the new set of downs, and then Rondell atoned.
Caught the next one.
Yep.
And so the whole feeling changed. Purdue's up 14-3, and now the country is starting to notice, hey, the number 2 Buckeyes are in trouble too.
Absolutely. Second half, Ohio State opened the second half with a field goal, made it 14.
But I think the key there, a long drive to start, because you're thinking 14-3, Buckeyes are going to get the kickoff. If they go down and score, stop, then
10.
They drove, and again, Purdue's defense stiffened, and instead of 14-10, it was only 14-6.
Just so you know, everybody watching, we all do that math when we're watching a game. Okay, if we can stop here, they can stop here. It's 14-10, then it's 4. They maybe hold it to a field goal, 14. We're all doing that constant calculation.
I didn't major in math, but I know touchdowns are better than field goals.
Yes, absolutely. They didn't. They got 3, and then we got 6. Once again, DJ Knox busts a rushing touchdown, 21-6 Boilermakers. Recurring theme here.
Yes.
Buckeyes drive the length of the field.
Yep.
They've got 4th down.
Yeah.
And they get stopped.
Yeah. Maybe the biggest play of the game, because, again, 21-6, they decide a field goal is not going to do them any good at that point. They go for the touchdown, and Purdue makes a break up at the goal line. And then all of a sudden, I think, if you weren't believing before that, now you're starting to think, hey, this might just happen.
Really starting to feel it. We go to the 4th quarter. Boilermakers up 21-6. DJ Knox. DJ Knox, who people forget, was the National Offensive Player of the Week for his performance in this game. And one of the reasons is the 42-yard touchdown run that he made early in the 4th quarter to extend that lead to 28.
They caught the Buckeyes in a little bit of a misalignment, not just once, but twice in that 4th quarter, and popped big plays. And DJ Knox was untouched on both touchdowns. And again, I think the roar of the Ross-Ade crowd on his first touchdown is as loud as I've ever heard that stadium.
It was part just exuberation and part how unexpected it was.
Yeah,
for sure. 35-13 after his second touchdown. Ohio State had answered back, but at this point they couldn't trade blow for blow with the Boilermakers. They were in a bad spot. The Buckeyes knew they had to try an outside kick. It failed. It's 35-13, and the Boilermakers have the ball at midfield, and then the magic happened.
Yep.
The play that has come to typify that game, 3rd down, after not getting a whole lot, not really trying to get a whole lot, it didn't seem. The Boilermakers were trying to run clock halfway through the 4th quarter with a couple score lead.
Yeah.
And Rondell starts out in the backfield, goes in motion.
Yeah.
David Blough takes a snap, drops back, and just swings an easy little pass out to the left flat.
Sometimes the easiest plays are the best plays. And you remember that Ohio State actually scored a touchdown. It was 35-20.
35-20.
And you're thinking, okay, if you have to punt the ball here, all of a sudden Ohio State scored now the last 2 times they've had the ball. They score again, it's going to be a 1-touchdown game, and anything can happen. And we'll talk with David about that a little bit later. But what I remember is I had given up on the play when Rondale got close to the sideline because I knew he'd made the first down, which was the important thing because they're going to be able to take more time off the clock. And it was down in the field down below us, and we were screened because there were all sorts of people on the sideline. And all of a sudden, you see number 4 squirt out of there and thinking, did he step out of bounds and he's just doing this just because?
Can't give it up.
And you could hear the roar of the crowd, and then you realize this guy's going to score a touchdown.
And score a touchdown running diagonal across the field and still pulling away from every white and gray clad football player that was in pursuit. Rondell comes across the goal line 42-20 at that point, and I think everybody, including the Buckeyes, knew that it was over.
But there was still one more cherry to be put on top of the sundae in that one.
There sure was. The Buckeyes get the ball. They're moving a little bit. Dwayne Haskins drops back and sends a pass out to his left. Marcus Bailey is there.
A Columbus native who had not been recruited by the Buckeyes and had this game circled for years.
Funny how that works. Bailey grabs it, goes the other way for the final score. It wasn't instantaneous that the fans stormed the field, but it sure felt like that. Fireworks going off in the background. Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit with one of the most iconic calls in Purdue sports history.
Boilermakers rush the field. What a night in West Lafayette. The strobes are going off here. Have you ever seen this before?
How about the timing of the strobe lights? They got the fireworks going off.
They were ready for a party. Maybe they saw it coming. Nobody else did. Not just an upset of an undefeated number 2 ranked team. A rout. 35 points in the second half. 4 fourth-quarter touchdowns by Purdue.
And it was one of the first times they had used the flashing lights.
Yes.
Remember, those were fairly new at that point to Ross-Ade. And they said afterward, it seems like this is choreographed. Well, yeah.
It was. They planned this, yes. On the day, Blough, 378 yards and 3 scores. DJ Knox, 16 carries for 128 and 3 scores. And Rondell, 12 catches for 170 and 2 touchdowns. And he had that iconic play, like we say, but he's also just one of very, very many stars that day.
You know, I remember in the fourth quarter, the 2 long runs by DJ Knox. You remember the great play that Rondale made and Marcus, but then the last thing you remember is Tyler Trent being wheeled in his wheelchair in front of the Purdue bench, and everybody in the crowd understands what's happening.
Yep.
And it was almost like the Pope was riding through. I mean, the reverence that was shown and the love that was shown that night, something that we'll never forget. And if you take Tyler Trent out of this, it would still be an electric night. Ohio State, the number 2 team under the lights, but adding that, it's a night that none of us will ever forget.
Well, you were up in the booth calling the action. I was actually down on the sidelines and right next to, in the vicinity of Tyler as he was being wheeled up the sideline and ultimately up the tunnel to the Purdue locker room so that he and his family could revel in the victory. And we've seen the video afterwards. He was hugged by virtually every member of that team afterwards. He came to the post-game press conference, and in the media room, the first thing that Coach Braun did was let Tyler speak.
I'm not entirely sure I'm qualified to make the opening statement, but just want to say Boiler up, and super happy that my prediction came true.
Before that even happened, Tyler shared a very private hug and some words with David Blough, and it was a magical night, to be sure.
You know, there are nights when you do what we do and you don't want to leave, because once you leave the stadium, or I had that in 1999 when Purdue won the women's national championship. I didn't want to leave San Jose Arena because it was still this magical bond. You didn't want to leave the stadium. You wanted that feeling forever. And you saw the field being rushed and talking to Jeff after the game on the headset. It was just such an unbelievable night. And, you know, certainly the good feelings lasted, but it was almost like Field of Dreams. Once you walked out of the stadium, a little bit of the magic went with it. And you just wanted that to last. I had the same thing in the Foster Farms Bowl the year before.
Yep.
And in the Music City Bowl when Purdue had the overtime win over Tennessee. You just don't want to leave. You don't want it to ever end. Yep. That feeling that you have of such a great feeling, and especially if it's a back and forth game in an electric atmosphere like this. It's why you do. It's why you love sports.
It is. It is the reason that we love sports. It's the reason that we pack into a stadium on Saturdays in the fall, and basketball arenas all year round. It feels like to try and capture that moment. We're going to try and recapture some of that magic when we come back. We talk to David Blough right after this.
Your Central Indiana Ford dealers are a proud sponsor of Purdue football. Visit your local Central Indiana Ford dealer today.
We're joined now by David Blough, the man who led the Boilermakers to victory on that fateful night in 2018. David, I know you're catching us in between stops here out in Phoenix. Thanks for joining us to talk about this Ross-Ade's Greatest Game edition.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for bearing with me with my technical difficulties as well.
The viewers know no better, let me tell you.
Technology is wonderful when it works. When it doesn't, it's not so good.
David, how often do you think about that 2018 Ohio State game?
Wow. Believe it or not, probably more often than you think. I I have had so many encounters over the last 5 years or so with fans, Buckeyes and Boilermakers, with fans who are Detroit Lions fans during my time in Detroit who enjoyed seeing the team from Ohio State lose that night. And there's so many encounters that it brings up to me. Even thinking about Tyler, thinking about, now I get to see Rondale every day, and we get to share that night together here in Arizona. And so there's so many different times that over the last 5 years where October 20th, 2018 has been right on the front of my brain.
You know, it was a strange night, David. I got to the stadium about 3 hours before kickoff, and I think a lot of people forget there was a big storm that went through that night. And even at game time, even the rain had stopped, but it was still a pretty windy night. Was it difficult to throw the football early in that game?
I remember coming out for warm-ups thinking, man, this is kind of brutal. It was cold. It was windy. It was a little bit wet. Maybe the grass was wet, so if the ball hit the turf, it was a little slick. And I remember thinking, wow, it is cold and windy. But I think once kickoff kind of came and went and the energy in that stadium was the way it was like, it kind of felt to me that it didn't really matter whether we were able to throw it all over the yard or if we were going to have to run it, that things were just going our way. And it just felt, special that night.
Absolutely. We've talked about some other upsets, and one thing that you kind of have to always have to get an upset of that magnitude is you have to have some breaks. You guys caught some breaks early on in that game, when you can put 7 on the board and the other team only gets 3. I mean, that's a break. When you are looking to go up, to go into halftime up by a little bit, and you got the courage to call a fake punt, or a fake field goal. The punter, Joe Shopper, threw me off there when he barrels for 4 yards when he needed 3. I mean, there were some things that went the way of the Boilermakers early that kind of helped carry that momentum and helped keep that energy up in the stadium.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that being the case. It just felt like everything was going our way, whether it was maybe it was a penalty here or there. Maybe it was a fumble by DJ Knox that bounced out of bounds instead of into one of one of the defenders' arms. And Joe Shopper running for that first down and us getting on the board with the Rondale touchdown. And then even into the second half, the fourth quarter, really, right, we would call a run play on 3rd and medium or 3rd and long, and DJ's running untouched, into the end zone. And so there's a lot of those moments where I reflect back and I'm like, wow, it was just special. It really was just a special night.
David, talking to Coach Brom going into that game, he thought you could score touchdowns and score points against the Ohio State defense. The question was, could you stop that Buckeye offense? I thought the defense played out of its mind, especially for the first 3 quarters.
No, I agree 100%. I was just, kind of reflecting on it. You think about, obviously, Marcus Bailey and his performance, but Antonio Blackman played as good as I remember our corner playing that night. During my time at Purdue, just in on contesting every play, making it hard for their really skilled group of quarterback and receivers to throw the ball down the field. And, they threw it 70 plus 73, if I remember correctly, 70 plus times. And I felt like it wasn't easy completions for an offense that had been so potent.
Definitely. I know a lot of people, when they think of that game, they'll think of Marcus's pick 6 at the end. They'll think of, DJ running untouched up the middle. But the play that comes first, in front of mind for most people is that late touchdown that Rondale had in the fourth quarter, where it is just a simple swing pass out into the left flat. And the next thing you know, he's I don't know, run over about 14 Buckeyes somehow. Explain that play or walk us through that play from your vantage point.
Yeah, I think I got to go back now, but we had run some sort of, Coach Brom liked to call some of the quarterback run games when we had to have it in the kind of critical down and distances, I would say. And so I had a run earlier that might have converted a 3rd down, and he knew we were getting a lot of man coverage. They knew they had to kind of give us man coverage. So he's like, okay, let's put Rondale in the backfield. And And as long as we get Rondale's guy blocked, which I believe as we motioned him out to the left and threw it to him on the swing pass, Cole Herdman just got enough of the guy who was responsible running with him. And, if that defender goes over the top of him, the angle's completely different. But Cole got that defender to go underneath, and Rondale catches it on the swing. He's got momentum going downhill, and then the incredible athletic ability that he has and center of gravity and all the strength he has in his legs to make guys miss and to drag defenders and to shake off. And that was easily the highlight of my career that night. And seeing him run into the end zone and celebrate with my teammates.
I have to admit on that touchdown, it was a third down play. And if you remember, I think you were up 2 touchdowns at the time. So you're trying to make sure that you score, or at least hang on to the football for a little bit. As soon as he got past the first down marker, I kind of relaxed a little bit, and I saw looked like he was going out of bounds. So I started to glance at the computer screen, and my son was spotting for me, and he kind of hit me on the arm like, Rondale's still running. I was just as surprised as anybody else because we couldn't see him. He disappeared into the Ohio State defense, and then all of a sudden, here comes number 4 running into the end zone.
Yeah, I think right. That's exactly probably when you hear Chris Fowler say, "He's still going."
It's Moore in motion. They get it to him. Moore in space. A burst of speed. A first down for Purdue. He's still going. Moore cuts back. Touchdown.
And it's that iconic clip for all of us. And I think it's that same feeling. It was like, wow, we got the first down. Here comes another 2 minutes off the clock, and then he did what only he can do, with the ball in his hand. And that was kind of when it hit me. It was like, we got this.
There's no coming back from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final whistle blows. That field got overrun pretty quick by 60,000 people. In that melee, what were you doing? Were you celebrating? Were you trying to find someone? Were you trying to get to the locker room?
Wow, you're making me reflect on all these fun memories. One of my best friends from one of my high school teammates and best friends, and the guy that I've trained with at his gym for the last 16 years, came to the game. It was really one of the only games they came to other than Nashville. And so they came to that game, and they were one of the first ones on the field hugging me. And I remember at the time standing there with Matt Rector, and he had told me that ABC, or I think it was ABC or ESPN, was going to find me, and Maria Taylor was going to do an interview. But with how fast it kind of got swarmed, we never got that to happen. So that I just became one of the 60,000 in the mosh pit, which was a lot of fun. A lot of my friends that I've never met, trying to take my towel, but it was a great time.
Well, David, this is a game that's going to go down in Purdue history as the Tyler Trent game. Talk about your relationship with Tyler, and specifically that night, what that meant to you to be able to give him that kind of a gift.
I am a firm believer that everything that happened that night, everything with Tyler's story was divine, was ordained, that it happened exactly how it was supposed to, with the College Game Day piece, the way it was aired that morning, and then the attention on the game, and then Tyler being able, after having a rough week, to be able to be there and get to see us, kind of accomplish what he had hoped for us.
Unexplainable. That's Boilermaker spirit right there.
When you were dreaming of trying to get here, fighting through what you've been through over the last weeks, how did you envision this night playing out?
Not like this, honestly. Ohio State has a really good football team, and I knew we had a chance, but I didn't think it was going to be 42-20. That's for sure.
And then, obviously, he was so brilliant and so smart, and he was able to use the platform that he had been given from his voice to now impact others and raise millions of dollars for cancer research, and to share his story and his testimony and how powerful it is. That's what I see. When somebody stops me and they say, "Hey, you were the quarterback of Purdue that night. Y'all beat Ohio State," and then the next thing is, and the kid Tyler Trent, right? That's every encounter I have about that night is about Tyler, and that's what people remember, and that's, in my opinion, exactly how it should be.
For a young man to have that kind of impact on the world is really kind of all anyone can ask of this life, and just we were always amazed at his pure selflessness, like you said, to make it about something so much larger than himself, to be very open about his faith, to be very open about his mission, and then to be able to live it out so strongly. It's been awe-inspiring, really, like you said.
That's exactly right, Corey. I mean, it's Romans 1:16 says, "For we are unashamed of the gospel," and he was unashamed. Like, he was unashamed of what he believed and what he stood for, and what he wanted to people to know about him and his life. So that's something that is living with me today, just seeing how bold he was, and really special.
The story did not end that night, of course. You've stayed in contact with the Trent family, and we have Ethan Trent, who's actually going to walk onto the football team starting this fall. That seems hard to believe. Again, what has that meant to you personally, to be involved with the Trent family and the cause that they have tried to uphold here?
Yeah, I think, our families were bonded because of the impact that cancer has had on their family and on me and my mom and our family. And it started there, but it turned into just a genuine relationship of people supporting one another, community lifting one another up, and being able to be there for them when they needed me, and maybe talk to Ethan or Blake, and them, Tony and Kelly, being able to pour into me when I needed some advice on some things. So it's a relationship that I cherish, like, very deeply, and one that I know that a big part of that reason I was at Purdue as the quarterback my senior year in 2018.
Your journey at Purdue was an interesting one, from playing early and putting up some monster numbers to, fighting for playing time there for a bit. You had a pretty fantastic injury at one point that you had to come back from, and then to have, some of those moments of triumph your senior year really seems to be the right way for that career to end up. Since then, you are you're in Phoenix for a reason. Like you said, you get to see Rondell every day, and gearing up for, is it year 5 in the NFL?
This is year 5 in the NFL now. So I know it's hard for me to believe too. I remember being in my first season, and guys would say, "Oh yeah, I'm going into 4. I'm going into 6." I'm like, "Oh, y'all are old," and now here.
And not only football responsibilities, David, but family responsibilities. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of the greatest joys my wife and I have gotten to walk through together in 4 years of marriage is now we're about 3 weeks away from welcoming our first child into the world, and really excited to tackle fatherhood and trying to be the best husband and father that I can be, while also pursuing a career and whatever it may be if football were to come to an end.
Well, we know you might have a magic career. You've had a few moments on Hard Knocks over the years. You've got a little a dabbling in some TV. I know coaching's probably in your future as well, but you've certainly got some options to you, it seems.
I think about all of them, all the time, whether it's, what will the work-life balance look like? What will the stress of coaching put on my family, and all those things. And I think, for me at least, some of the most important men in my life have been coaches. And I think being able to do that and impact the next generation of athletes coming up, and serve them, as well as, kind of scratch my love for football itch at the same time, would I think be really satisfying and a life well lived.
We've talked a little bit, David, about the legacy that Tyler Trent and his family have left. What's the legacy of David Blough? What do years from now, when they think back on David Blough at Purdue, what do you want people to remember?
I hope they remember somebody who tried to do things the right way, who tried to lead as best we could, and put the team first, right? Like, that was always my first goal, was to hopefully leave Purdue a better place than it was when I got there. And I hope that is the case that somebody remembers. And then, I hope there's, 200 guys who I might have crossed paths with in that locker room that know that if they ever need anything, that they can call on me and I will be there and drop anything.
I think that's about all the legacy anybody can ask for sure, and I'm certain that that will be yours, no doubt about it in my mind. Anything you've wanted to talk about that we haven't asked you about? Any stories from that day that maybe are untold as of right now?
I was actually texting with Kirk Barron the other day. For some reason, it came up that I was just thinking there's a hilarious clip that has probably never been out there of us walking down the tunnel, DJ, Kirk, and I going out for center and quarterback exchanges, and Kirk slips and falls right on those railroad tracks coming down to the field. And I was like, I can't believe that nobody else saw this or like it wasn't on a fail, one of the fail lists, but that was something funny. No, I had an Ohio State guy come up to me in Phoenix the other day and say, he's like, I hate you. And I was like, wow, that's kind of, and he rolled up his sleeve. He showed me his Ohio State tattoo, and he said that night ruined that whole season for us. And not that that's, why it's fun for us, but that's always a fun story that I kind of get to live maybe once a month.
That's wild.
And I'm sure there are enough Buckeye fans around the country. You'll be able to relive that night forever. Trust me.
I don't know. I'm okay with saying this. I'm a firm believer that a big part of the reason I was in Detroit with the Lions was because of that night. There were so many people, whether it's conscious bias or subconscious bias, who saw that night and have a love for Michigan and have a hatred for Ohio State, and they saw what we were able to do. And that was a big part of my legacy in Detroit was thanks for beating the Buckeyes. And I even had fun when I was the Browns, on the Browns undrafted, running around kind of doing the OH and them not knowing that I'm subtly jabbing them.
Just a dig, just a little dig.
I like this is a side of David Blough we did not see very often. Right. I like this.
So yeah, I've always been somewhat of the prankster. I feel like I've had to hide that side maybe a little bit more.
All right. We better let you go because the last thing we want is an angry spouse that we made you miss your plane. So hey, thanks for the time. And again, what a great night that was to relive. And there were whatever 60,000. I think before history is done, there will be 500,000 people who were at that game that night, and whether they were there in person or not, they're going to have vivid memories of it.
Thank y'all so much for having me and letting me kind of reflect and relive that moment. And thanks for honoring that special night in Tyler too.
Thanks, David.
Get your sleep now.